thank you for taking the time this morning. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Watton. I'm the NTT New Zealand CTO. I look after the go-to-market, of which Cisco App Dynamics is part of that for us. Today's run sheet we'll be kicking off with Richard from Cisco. Will be followed by a fireside chat with Blair from ACC and Dayton from MOE. So, guys, thanks very much for making the time. I really appreciate it. Good insight to how a client who has been on this journey for 3 years, 3+ years, and someone who's just started the journey. So, opportunity for all of you to ask those questions that may be pertinent to where you'd like to be. Dan Owen, who runs the GTM for this area, will then close out with a little bit of NTT. So once again, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming, and I know it's a pretty busy time. So, Richard, I'll hand over to you.
What I want you to think about, though, as we're going through this conversation today, and you're certainly going to see that when you're listening to ACC story and MOE story, don't just think about this as a bit of a tool, for infrastructure monitoring or application performance. The world's moved on, all right, and I think you're certainly going to hear that explicitly when you hear some of ACC's story with their maturity and where they've got to. So we use very much the word at Cisco for full stack observability. So what you're going to hear about from ACC and from MOE is from the infrastructure all the way through to the end user experience, from the database, from the network, and everything in between. So think about that full stack observability, and for anyone here who's got a technical role, what I would encourage you to do is keep on asking questions of Blair and of Dayton around why. Why is this important? And think about those business journeys that your customers take every single day on the systems and the applications. At the end of the day, that's what runs your organization. So as you're going through this, think about the question as to why it's important.
Thanks, Richard, and thank you to all of you attending today. I'll just start by saying that I'm really disappointed. I was so hoping that I could be there in person to deliver this presentation, but as if we needed another reminder, this once again just serves as exactly that. The way we do business has drastically changed over the last 18 months and will continue to do so. And with that being said, let's take a look at how Cisco App Dynamics can help your organization solve complex performance challenges and enable awesome digital experiences for your internal and your external customers. We live in a time of unprecedented change. Technology impacts almost every aspect of our daily lives, from the way we live to the way we work, and of course, the way we learn. How brands engage with customers and how they drive revenue depends on applications now more than ever. And in many ways, the app is actually now the business. As a result, businesses are committed more than ever to making their digital experiences better, easier, and more engaging for their users. And this has forced businesses to drive faster innovation cycles, leading to a world of constant change for IT. This transformation has only accelerated through intense pressure on the business. There are many examples of this, the most obvious one, of course, being the pandemic. Organizations are speeding up their transformation progress to merely continue to exist as a business. That's how important it is, all in the name of this digital experience. But that's not to say that digital transformation doesn't come without its challenges. This represents just 3 of the most common challenges associated with digital transformation, all contained in our Agents of Transformation report from 2021, which is a survey of over 1,000 IT professionals from a number of verticals. Although digital transformation is here to stay, the complication that it introduces is astronomical. So what's the implication? Well, the cost of doing nothing or simply not focusing on what matters, the user experience, is detrimental to any business. With the experience being at the forefront of IT agendas, and as customer loyalty patterns shift away from brands, user experience is what wins. No longer about the services, it's about the experience that is delivered via consumption of those services. The stakes are higher than ever before. We are now in a true digital race. The way that Cisco App Dynamics approaches this is by understanding exactly what it takes to deliver great user experience. We work with each area of the business to ensure that they have critical visibility into each layer of the stack, whether that be the infrastructure team, who typically are focused on CPU, memory, and other infrastructure-related items, or the application team that are deep in the application code. The network team, of course, who are looking at packet loss, latency, or jitter, or the security team that keeps strict measures in place to reduce risk exposure that could destroy a business. Bringing together teams that often operate separately is a great start. We then ensure that this full stack observability aligns to business initiatives and strategic goals. The way that Cisco App Dynamics approaches this is unique. Our mission is to help your business thrive by turning performance into profit, delivering not just full stack observability, but business observability, because great decisions can't be made based solely on technical data. But the question is, what does that mean for you? Firstly, we ensure business context deep into the technology stack, the app, infra, network, and security. Secondly, we make it our promise to unite and align teams across the organization to focus on shared priorities. Thirdly, we provide the ability to act with confidence and focus on what matters most to the business. We bring this together with a tried and tested framework for IT operations. This framework starts with three key pillars: visibility across all your core environments, whether they are on-prem or in the cloud, or a mixture of both, from older systems right the way through to cloud native. With Cisco App Dynamics, we take visibility that one step further, and we add business context to everything that we collect. We know what is normal, easily identifying anomalies. When it comes to the data itself, this can be from the AppD agent, open telemetry, or third-party data. The critical piece here is that you gain visibility into the 6 core data domains seen here. Insights. Data is not helpful without business insight. Cisco App Dynamics accomplishes this by ensuring that we add business context to everything we do. From the alerts, driving prioritization, through to the topology of the environment, marrying the core data sets together to provide contextual insights, removing potentially siloed opinions. And once you have that data that you need, getting to the root cause analysis is trouble-free. And finally, action. Root cause analysis drives recommendations and drives automated fixes of identified issues, reducing the time it takes to find, identify, and resolve problems. And critically, there's a feedback loop. This is where we confirm that the issue has been fixed by looking at what matters most, cross-domain data, and driven by business context. For IT operations, you get unparalleled insight into additional layers of the stack. So this all sounds good so far, but what does it look like from a day-to-day perspective for your teams? Let's take a look. As we work our way through this demo, you will see that we cover the 6 core data domains covered in the observability framework. What we have here is a customized and configurable dashboard in Cisco App Dynamics, created to monitor our business-critical insurance application. This can be treated as what I like to call the first pane of glass that our teams look to discover potential issues in the environment. Represented, we have our all-important business KPIs, revenue for policies being processed, loans being approved. We have our user experience, paramount in today's digital world, application and infrastructure KPIs for the key components in our application, such as order processing, auth services, and policy processing. The health of our external services on which this application is so reliant. And at the top middle section of the dashboard, we have infrastructure insights being provided by Cisco IWO. And just below that, the health of our network from Cisco Thousand Eyes. Last but definitely not least, on the right-hand side, we have our Cisco Secure application. Straight away, my eyes are drawn to the red indicators in this dashboard. We are no longer meeting business, user experience, or application KPIs. In addition, I'm not seeing nearly as much green in Thousand Eyes as I would expect to. I'm going to take a deeper look at this in our payments dashboard. This dashboard specifically focuses on our insurance applications policy payments. In this view, we have context or business observability into the payments being submitted by both revenue value and payment count, the end user performance, and the performance of critical third-party APIs that our application relies on. There are some concerning things we are seeing on this dashboard. The yellow business indicator for payments submitted have dropped below baselines, and that the business is being negatively impacted by the anomaly. In fact, we can see earlier today that the payment stopped working altogether. Correlated with that, we see an increase in response time for our user experience. Let's take a look at what's going on in the application. This is the flow map for our create charge business transaction, the same one that our dashboard said had high response time and a drop in revenue. The topology mapping represents the multiple microservices that support this business transaction, as well as the external payments processing API that our transaction relies on. Sure enough, around 6 a.m., we can clearly see an increase in response time. Drilling into one of our slow snapshots allows us to quickly isolate the problem domain. Is this a problem with our app, the network, the internet, or the external service provider? Here we can see that this external HTTP call to the payment processor API is taking longer than normal. And eventually, errors out with a remote call timeout. Using the snapshot, we have quickly confirmed that the slowness is not coming from our app or the code. But what if we could find out exactly what is impacting connectivity to the payment gateway? Returning to our dashboard, we can see towards the right-hand side that we've got some insights being provided by Thousand Eyes. Around the time, we saw an increase in end user experience in terms of response time. We also saw that we had an increase in latency across our network. And in fact, towards the top right-hand side, you can see that our payments value dropped off completely at the same time as this increase. To gain further insights, let's dive into Thousand Eyes. In Thousand Eyes, we have configured a test that simulates a web service request to the third-party payment service. We're testing from both inside our network as well as from 4 cloud-hosted points of presence across the globe. At this layer, we can see an increase in latency from various locations. However, our production environment seems to be impacted the most. This tells us that our data center network more than likely isn't at fault, and instead the problem possibly sits on the internet leading up to the third-party payment processor. We can get a deeper understanding of that path at the path visualization layer. This view represents the hop-by-hop path our traffic traverses from the agent all the way up to the payment service data center. Our app is running in a data center in the US Pacific Northwest. And when we focus on the requests, we can see the traffic is being routed all the way to the payment processor located in Singapore. Why would a service endpoint in Singapore service a request coming from the US? Clearly something is off here, but this explains the reason why we are seeing that latency and slowness in our application. This unique view contains all the information our application and network teams need to understand the problem. At this point, I'll package these diagnostics as a share link from the Thousand Eyes UI and send it over to the payments team to resolve the issue with the payment vendor. While the team works on our networking issue, let's take a look at Cisco IWO. Cisco Intersite Workload Optimizer provides application resource management, assuring application performance by taking preventative actions to ensure infrastructure is optimized for application demand. IWO assures application performance at the lowest cost while maintaining your defined policies. In the IWO UI, the diagram that you see on the left of the screen is the supply chain. This shows your entire environment, from the applications that are running, to the application servers, containers or pods they run on, to the VMs and virtual infrastructure, and the physical hardware for compute, network, and storage. After enabling IWO, within about an hour, you can start to see your entire application infrastructure stack. This shows the status and count at each tier, how resources flow between them, and the actions to bring each of them to a state of health. Having this type of visibility across your entire environment is powerful just in of itself. This discovery process is automatic. It is API-driven and agentless. IWO plugs into all the layers of the application stack, from the application itself to supporting containers and VMs and platforms, to the underlying hosts, storage, and infrastructure as a service layer. IWO works across your hybrid estate, including on-prem and public cloud, and including those microservices and containers. Preventing congestion is a hard problem to solve because demand is always changing and it constantly moves. It's beyond human scale and it cannot be solved with people and manual processes, but this can be solved with software. If you aren't doing anything to drive your environment into a desired state, then you're just monitoring it, waiting for something to break. These actions on screen are what IWO is recommending now. But taking these actions isn't just a one-time activity. Actions are related to performance, efficiency, or compliance, and they can be manual or automatic. IWO lets us understand A, what is the state that I want to run the environment in? B, what are all the actions that will get me there? And C, when I'm confident in the actions, I'll turn on automation. A useful analogy for this is, actions are all about letting you eliminate the smoke before the fire. Eliminate all the noise of seeing warnings and alerts before your critical applications have problems. Broadly accepting all the applications here will drive the environment into the desired state where congestion risks are eliminated and my application performance is assured. In the examples shown here, IWO has recommended the action of resizing one of our virtual machines used for the policy processing portion of our business application. Right now, the vCPU average utilization is pretty much constantly at 100%. By adding an additional vCPU, IWO has advised us that it expects CPU utilization to drop from the current 100% usage down to a far more acceptable 66.7%. Now, of course, don't forget, there's a constant feedback loop between IWO and Cisco App Dynamics. So if this change has not had the desired effect, there will of course be additional recommendations made by the platform. Now that we have taken a look at the application, the network on which the application is so reliant, and of course the underlying application infrastructure, but what if our application issues were caused by some security event? If we put on our app ops hat for a second, traditionally we have used this application flow map view to gain insights into our application performance. But towards the right-hand side, you'll notice a new section, security events. What we have done here is expose a view into the application security. This functionality doesn't introduce any additional burden onto the application team, since this security agent is self-contained within our already deployed application agent. By viewing the security events, we are taken into Cisco's secure application. This overall view shows open vulnerabilities found, active attacks detected, and the number of applications and associated services that have Cisco Secure Application deployed within your environment. Let's start by viewing vulnerabilities. All security teams have a vulnerability scanner, so how is this one any different? Vulnerability scanning is typically done pre-production. The benefit of our agent is that it provides real-time production assessment of vulnerabilities and then maps that back to the running instances. As part of the triage process, this AppOps person, who is not a security expert but still has access to the security information, would come into the platform and identify that there are a number of critical and high severity vulnerabilities that exist within this specific application on the legacy translation application tier. By switching over to the Libraries tab, we are given a view of the libraries our applications are using, whether there are any vulnerabilities associated with those libraries, as well as the recommended remediation. The real value here is allowing the application teams to prioritize which libraries to tackle first based on the potential impact they can have on the application. Once the team has upgraded the library to the recommended remediation version, how do they know that the risk has been mitigated? Well, the power of Cisco Secure Application is its ability to scan the environment in real time. Once the problem is resolved, the vulnerability status will automatically change from discovered to fixed. The attacks view provides our AppSec team with the view on vulnerabilities that are currently being exploited. From this view, we can see that attacks are taking place, where they are taking place, when they took place, and whether the outcome was a block or exploit. Diving into the attack provides the additional information needed to triage the attack. In this case, the attack is a SSRF, or server-side request forgery. From this view, we are given insight not just into the events of the attack, but what they touched, what they potentially stole, and then where we need to go to address it. All of this makes the AppSec ops job easier, as they can go to the application team with the stack trace, which gets them down to code level visibility. What line of code, what methods were involved, so that they can go and address that. Likewise, instead of having to go and dig through logs or application telemetry, we have the information needed right here. What command was executed, what files were accessed, so that we know exactly what the blast radius of the attack was. All right, the payments team have come back to me and advised that they have rectified the issue identified by Thousand Eyes. Let's take a look. Looking at the path visualization in Thousand Eyes once again, we can see that traffic from our US-based agents, both our production application location and the San Francisco cloud-hosted agent, are now being routed to the US-based payment processor. So indeed, it does look like the DNS issue has been resolved. But what about those business KPIs? By going back into App Dynamics, we're able to validate that the fix has worked, and our business indicator is back in the green, with payments being resumed and customer experience back to normal. Okay, so let's recap on what we have just covered. We spoke about Cisco IWO and its capabilities of linking into App Dynamics and providing application performance aware resource optimization that provides us with recommendations for our infrastructure environment. We covered App Dynamics APM, the key component to full stack observability, and more importantly, business observability. The information we found as part of our triage led us to determine that our current user experience issues were falling into a domain outside of our application and more than likely somewhere on the internet. Using Thousand Eyes, we discovered that traffic from our US was being routed to third-party payment processors' Singapore-based data center, adding additional latency to the user experience. As we triaged this issue, all of the technical data was used in the context of our business metrics, business KPIs such as overall revenue and payments made. And while not the cause of our payment problem today, we explored Cisco Secure Application and its ability to scan your application for vulnerabilities, highlight attacks and their blast radius, and recommend remediations for existing vulnerabilities. That's full stack observability at work, and I hope this has been informative. I'll now hand over to the team for the Fireside chat. Thanks all.
Blair, firstly, maybe could you do a quick introduction, your role and what you do for ACC?
Sure. Hey everyone. So I'm Blair Shingleton. I lead the enterprise monitoring team at ACC. So we manage our monitoring APM and logging platforms, and we're trying to spread the word within ACC that there's real value in this and getting the teams to pick it up and run with it.
Cool. And yourself, Dayton?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dayton Height, Senior Manager for Operations and Infrastructure Services at Ministry of Education. So at a different level to Blair here, I manage the infrastructure team essentially that we've got in-house and the application support team. I'm originally from an applications space, recently managed that team within that area, and obviously for me, applications and monitoring is quite a focus. We're quite new on our journey compared to ACC, so looking forward to talking about that with you guys.
Cool, thanks. So Blair, you've obviously been on the journey for 2 to 3 years now, and maybe you can, I guess, talk about why you took this direction and specifically what you get out of it.
Yeah, sure. So it's actually been a little bit longer than 3 years. It's been building for probably four or so. But we were largely, as I'm sure a lot of organisations are, largely reactive to major incidents. So we'd be seeing things in infrastructure monitoring when they'd already broken, or the dreaded phone call on a service desk saying, from a hospital, I'm trying to submit claims, we can't send them to ACC, what's going on? It's a terrible position to be in. So that was a major driver to try and get visibility and be proactive. Another part is we were on the way to it, through our major digital transformation, moving workloads to the cloud, and just not having that visibility. So when an exec or a leadership team member would ask, how are things running? It's a bit of a finger in the air. We didn't know. So that's sort of the things that motivated us.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And yourself, Dayton?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, I think everyone in the room can relate to that story, and I can as well. I'm thinking about some of the apps that I've been responsible for running in the past. A bit of a black box. It's great to have some visibility as system administrators, engineers, not developers, who obviously know the inside workings, but for my teams, just getting that visibility is key. I wished I could have had this tool a lot sooner, a lot earlier, a few years ago. Some old antique applications, unfortunately, probably App Dynamics wouldn't have been able to help us out with because they're a bit old, but got rid of those now. But moved on. But there's still plenty to do and to fix, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. So Blair, I mean, one of the things that I think is quite unique, and I think Richard called it out earlier, in terms of the business side of using App Dynamics. Are you able to talk a little bit about? You talked briefly about the claims process, but how that's helped the actual business in terms of it, rather than the technical aspects of it.
Yeah, sure. So again, previous roles in different organisations, there's always been a bit of a mindset between it's us and them, the business and IT. And so what we've done really well is we've worked with the business to get the technical teams thinking in the business mindset. So when you hear us talking on the floor, we're not talking about the server or the network. We're talking about business terms, business transactions, and it just makes that conversation when we're interfacing with the business a whole lot easier. They trust that we know what's important to the business. And it's because when we're building up the monitoring, we're building it with that business mindset. So business transactions, open claim, lodging claim, those sorts of things. So it's just ingrained in us, and that's been a real shift. The business trust us, that we know what's important to them, and our business users are actually consuming the data from App Dynamics because it's relative to them and it gives them confidence.
So basically, you've taken a complex business process or function and made that available up into the business based on the technology that sits below.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Okay, cool. And yourself, Dayton, you're obviously really early on that. Any thoughts on how that may work within the business?
Yeah, I guess we don't really have that at the moment with our implementation. We have actually, through our journey over the last sort of 12 months, Richard and the guys helping us out, Mark, who's not here and not able to present either, unfortunately, just yet, has helped us out massively, just demonstrating that to us. And we have had some business teams involved in that process right from the very start. That was a key thing, I think, wasn't it, Richard? It's not only about the IT teams and the support teams, it's the business view, just getting some buy-in from them. It's very small for us though, so we're very early days, but there's excitement there. I think we're building slowly, and as we go, I think, on our journey.
And do you think, I guess, is there anything you'd sort of put out to the group here around, obviously starting on this journey new, some of the things that they might want to think about, and any gotchas?
Well, for me, I've just thinking back, and I did a little bit of research yesterday. I first came across App Dynamics in 2014. I was looking back at my emails. This is pre-Cisco days. I was very interested in getting something like that into the organisation and just proving the value and securing the investment. Working in government, obviously, people are very careful of the money. We don't have a lot to throw around, and if it's perceived to be a nice to have, then you may not be successful in your investment bid. So that's kind of been my story through my journey. It wasn't until we got an opportunity from Cisco with some licensing over a period of time through other Cisco investment that we made. We spent quite a bit of money, I think. That always helps, but that's given us a leg up, a foot up. So I guess for me is if you can prove that value in whatever mechanism whatever string you can pull, then getting that foot in the door basically, and that's essentially where I'm at. We've got it in production now with a small implementation, and I guess everyone's going to have to do what they can do to get to that point, and then it's onwards and upwards from there, hopefully. For me, with App Dynamics.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. And Blair, I guess for you, where did you start with one application, or did you look at it at many?
I was just going to say that it's a very similar story to how we got started. So we started very small. We first put App Dynamics in when we were having a production incident, and we couldn't see a way forward, and we found what it was very quickly. So that sort of set us on our path, and then from there we started small, putting AppD across our most vital app, Claims app, and from there we were just seeing wins, being proactive, and avoiding major incidents. So we were just chalking up the wins, and that was getting more confidence within the business, and we just grew from there. Still very controlled, but to where we are today, we're still just very strategic in where we're putting AppD. Just keeping that momentum.
Yeah, oh, fantastic. And I guess you talked a little bit about moving to the cloud, and obviously there's a not only just moving to the cloud, but changing the architecture. So moving from more of a monolithic type application built in on-prem to microservices, containers, all of those things that the cloud provides. And could you talk a little bit about how App Dynamics works in that environment, and what it gives you?
Sure. So that's back to my point around the visibility. Just before App Dynamics, we weren't able to see all these hot points in a system, and that's when we were starting to move workloads to Azure. So we'd have applications traversing our in-country data centers in Azure. How are things looking? So putting agents on there will tell us that telemetry. And fast forward to just recently where we're major push to microservices. So we have upwards of 1,000 microservices, and we've got a pattern now to put AppD agents into those, just so we're continuing to see that visibility. We've had to adapt, but we're in a really good space, and we're continuing that visibility.
So you feel you'd kind of be blind to that telemetry if you didn't have AppD?
Yeah, we'd be back where we were 4 years ago, guessing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And yourself, you're obviously early in the cloud. So any thoughts around that?
We've got quite a different environment to ACC. Blair and I were talking about that a little bit earlier. We do have a monolithic app, which we're currently replacing and building a new version of, or completely re-architected application in the cloud in Azure. And I'm just thinking ahead to how App Dynamics can help us in that area. We've got a lot of integrations with that application. Well, we'll have a lot of integrations with that application. Currently, we've got on-prem data centers. How things might work there, or if those workloads are migrated to the cloud, what they're going to look like. And what we can see is, from your experience, we can make use of this tool in that environment, whatever the future brings, really. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. It was interesting. And don't shoot me, I was at the rugby on Saturday last week, and I know guys were meant to have a test down here, but I think Beervana got in the way, which is probably Rugby Beervana. Some Beervana won, I can see that. And there was a competition going around. Win an signed All Black jersey by the current team, and each of the corporate venues had those. They had an application, 5 pages. It took 25 minutes to register your score, so it was going to be the closest person to the score. And when I was thinking about coming here and hosting this event, it's very interesting that whilst it took us 25 minutes to do it, we persevered. But the feedback to the organisation has been, do you know where the problem is? They could have said it's the network. Well, the network was 5G. The promise of 5G, all of that bandwidth. So the likelihood was it the bandwidth? Was it the application? Where was the application? What database was it using? How many people were accessing it? And I think when we look at these things and you think about it from your customer's point of view, what's the experience they're going to have, and then how do you then fix those problems? There's a test next week this week on Saturday. Will the experience be different, or will it be the same? And I think I've passed some information back to them, sort of saying, it was a great day, great event, but a lot of people didn't get to put their score in, and so therefore we weren't able to get into that competition, and we're a little bit unhappy. So I think when you start to look at those scenarios from a customer's perspective, then I think AppD plays a great part in that, in terms of that true customer experience. Look, I'd like to open up the floor, I guess, to any questions from around the room.
I thought you were going to say you won the jersey.
No, I didn't get my score in.
Oh, you didn't get? Oh, right. You're one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, through dashboards, really. So we're pulling in a vast amount of data. It's how we visualize that. So it might be a outsourced vendor that wants a view. So we can be very technical in that particular dashboard with the same data, or we can provide a business sort of view for that. So we've gone from having war rooms where multiple vendors in to now with that D we're giving access to all of our vendors, so everyone is looking at the same data, it's essentially holding all of our vendors accountable to give ACC the level of service that we're after, just through the data we can quickly zero in on where we think the issue is as well. So previous days we'd say that example of claims not coming in, a message would go out, all the teams would check their areas, so we'd have networks checked, databases, all those sorts of things. Now, with that visibility, we can quickly zero in where the issue is. So it could be an application server, could be the database that's running hot. So we can just be very direct and engage that team. It's really changed things for us.
Yes. Well, given that we're at the very beginning of our journey, the application that we've got, AppD over, dashboard clearly shows the transaction response times and all that sort of stuff, so we can see when things are running slow and that sort of thing. The application is there's a lot of machine to machine transactions with it as well. So obviously there's no user experience in that sense from a human point of view, but there is from other machines, obviously. But yeah, just showing the business that and the support teams, not just the system administrators and app support guys look after it, but the BAs and the developers and that, and they can see, okay, well, what we're hoping they will be able to work through is improving those times. The application's very buggy. There's a lot of legacy stuff that needs to be fixed in there. So yeah, and all that adds up to a better user experience at the end of the day, hopefully, when we get there. Yeah.
We're also sort of using the EUM functionality for, so we have internal customers, our staff, as well as external customers. They could be medical providers, or it could be claimants, that are, filing a claim. So we're using end-user monitoring across a variety of those, so our internal apps to tell us, the performance at the end of the desk, as well as our digital services that are going out to the communities. So, yeah, getting great value there as well. I've got an example, actually. So probably 2 months ago, a deployment went into our one of our digital customer-facing sites, and there was a particular issue with an element in the page, and an alert went to the digital team, and they had the fix, and it was in production that afternoon. So it's huge. So they got an alert saying response time is, far exceeding baseline, and yeah, that would have, looking back, that would have had to wait, potentially weeks to be notified that the site's slow, and then fixing. Yeah. So that was a massive one.
Yeah, I guess that's recruiting allies. And my sort of in the leadership team that I'm part of. So one of my colleagues, getting her enthusiastic and seeing the value was quite key. So her responsibility is in the application space as well, but sort of her and I jointly sort of have that application sort of end to end. She has developers and teams of BAs, application delivery teams, and testing teams and that sort of thing in there. And I have the operational side, system administrators and database administrators, whatever. So together, well, not together, because I guess I was leading something and trying to show the value with the help of Cisco, obviously, and AppD, of this product and how it could solve some issues for her. And she's had a few. This application that we chose, it's quite a simple application in its architecture, but it's quite problematic, unfortunately. Outsourced vendor doing the development side of things that we're now bringing in-house. So what I was trying to do with her was to demonstrate, okay, we can get some real good value out of this that can assist your development team here. And as far as the money went, now, I mean, back in the day when I first looked at AppD, I wasn't a budget holder. I didn't have purse strings, as it were, or a seat at the table. to talk about those things. Now I'm in that position, and literally when the new budget come round, we've had some reductions in some areas, other licensing and that sort of thing that we're saving money on. I put some money in my budget for AppD, just for I'll build a little bit of fat in, but it's not getting it in the back door, but basically, have some money there, and then as we grow, to the size that ACC are, that will need some serious investment or some money, OPEX there to pay for that. But so mine's quite small at the moment, and as long as my team and my manager are seeing value, they're not questioning these decisions and those things that we've got in our delegation. So yeah.
The key thing is that you were the one driving it.
Yes. Yeah. It needs someone to see that value, obviously.
You mentioned development teams were on board as well, and you managed to get them on board. Was it a critical factor in this whole decision making?
Through that journey, we had the vendor. We were providing insights for the vendor at the time. The strategy all along was to bring that development in-house over the last sort of 12 months or so anyway, but during that journey we had the vendor. I'm not sure what value they got out of it, to be honest, Richard. I don't know if you can remember, but
I think they were able to help identify where the problems were and fix some of those problems. But I think also from MOE's perspective, what you then had with respect to that particular vendor was the evidence to hold them to account.
Yeah.
Whereas previously, if there was an SLA or some description, you had no way or recourse of actually going back and with some evidence, some tangible evidence to actually hold the vendor to account.
Yeah.
And I think in this situation, the vendor probably said, "Oh shit, maybe we are responsible here because we've been caught out potentially."
That's right. So, bringing the development, which is transitioning at the moment, so it hasn't happened yet. The developers in-house are excited. They can immediately see a shopping list of things that they need to work on, prioritise that, and make some quick improvements of this application. And then I hope that we'll be able to grow the footprint out, include other critical apps that we've got. Not yet. Not in the same way that these guys. Obviously, they've ACC are already there, and this is just one part of a jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day, and where we're going, very similar to ACC. Our workloads are quite different, but we're obviously going to the cloud. We've got a strategic direction to go towards Salesforce for a lot of our things, M365 and other cloud services, software as a service, obviously. But we'll have a remaining set of apps and services that'll be however they're running. They're all on-prem at the moment, running .NET apps and all those sorts of things. But they'll change to containers or microservices or wherever we go with those. And I think those remaining set, plus the big payment app that we've got going into the cloud, that sort of thing, which has got a lot of integrations, getting something like AppD over those services, and just starting small and improving that value is where we're at the moment. So we can build it into the strategy eventually, hopefully. Yeah. I'll let you answer that one.
So is that so for us it's when we're deploying this monitoring, working with the business to build it up. So defining what is important for the business, so we build those transactions out and alerting from there. So working with them, if something breaks, what will affect your day-to-day running, and we build that out.
So you're actually doing that in your sprint planning,
yeah,
aren't you?
Yeah,
Part
definitely.
of that sprint planning process.
Yeah. So our PI planning phases, we have business stakeholders and technical teams working together.
So you're building it into
yeah, it's ingrained into the deployments. Yeah.
So part of like non-functional requirements.
Yep, definitely. Yep. So back in that, it used to always be an afterthought. Something would be going in on the weekend, and how are we monitoring it? But now we're right back at the start. So monitoring is, it's just we've got a seat at the table with the business and the projects. Hasn't been easy to get to this stage, but we've made good progress.
Go back to that point, every system has a business journey.
Yep.
Maybe just touch on some of the conversations that the business guys, when they come and knock on your door to your team, what are they saying? They're not talking about monitor my database, but what are they asking you to help with?
It is the key business steps. So in a claims journey, a claim comes in, it goes through some automation, and then it gets logged. And if I'm in the hospital bed, I get a text saying my claim has been approved by ACC. So their key thing is that end-to-end process, and making sure that all of those things are happening at an expected SLA or NFR. So it's just having that visibility that Monday morning's our busiest morning. They want to be sure that even under load, we're still meeting our targets. And there's a manager in Dunedin that has a particular dashboard up that after a release, he comes in and checks that AppD dashboard just to give himself and his business team confidence that the systems are functioning as expected. Because historically, after a release, things might not be running because there's a poor database query or something like that. So that's just become ingrained in the teams that they're a little bit nervous after a release, and that's expected. But that's something he's using to give his team confidence. It's a bit of both. So my team build the dashboards with our support partner, but all the data's there anyway. It's under the it's in the platform, so we don't need to spend a great deal chopping and changing between the personas. So it's all driven from the monitoring team. Just on that, you mentioned BI team. So I get the same manager in Dunedin. So I went down a couple of years ago and showed him the dashboards that we'd come up with for him. And he was just blown away because before that, he was using a data warehouse report for yesterday's activity, and they would structure their team on specific queues. So it's a really, quite delayed reaction. And now he can just look at this AppD dashboard and it tells him, where the claims are going into, and within 5 minutes have teams across the various queues. It's a huge win.
So you're saying he's able to manage his workforce according to where the demand's coming from.
Rather than looking at yesterday's data. All the metrics are there, and the developers would have access to look at it. And to me, it doesn't mean a lot to me because that's not my background. But sure, the developers look at this telemetry. It renders all the components that load up that page. Something might be slow, so they can go and address that, and they can also see the end user experience journey through that website, and it might be taking a flow that they didn't expect, so they'll go and develop to meet that. So the data is there. It's just the thing is just having people consume it, and that's part of my role to get out there and spread the word and just showcase the functionality. So we were doing amazing, putting AppD across everything, and then we went and started consuming PaaS and SaaS services where we can't necessarily get agents. So we can surmise a bit of the performance from there, but we're as you say, we're a little bit blind. So we've kicked off a deployment for Thousand Eyes, and I see it as App Dynamics for the internet, or for your WAN and SaaS services. So we're going to sort of overlay that telemetry with the AppD metrics. So we're a big Salesforce customer. Well, we're strategic direction to be a big Salesforce customer in New Zealand. And that was one of the key areas where we were blind all of a sudden. So we couldn't really see how our users were hearing performance issues, but we couldn't really pinpoint them. So we're putting Thousand Eyes in to tell us the experience from our branch to the data center and then out to Salesforce. and we can overlay that all onto the same dashboard. So we can get the application view and the internet and SaaS view. So it's quite exciting. We're also doing that too. We're going through a data center migration at the moment. So we're using that to give us some baselines in network response from our current data center. And then as we go to the new one, we've got some baselines of what normal looks like. So we've got that, that data, and it's not just a hunch. So if we hear, things are running slower, we can actually have the data and look into it. Might be a case of things are, and then we address them, but we can also have the data and say, no, it's not.
Most of the customers in this room today will be thinking about AWS, Azure, Google. Yep. Maybe you've got some examples there around some of the workload.
Yeah, so we're predominantly Azure. At the moment, we have a small amount in AWS, and then all of the SaaS, so M365, Salesforce, that suite. So it's just getting that confidence in, soon to be Oracle Cloud as well. Just getting that confidence that connections that we can't necessarily control, that experience is up to standard.
Any further questions? Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate your time, as I said. Some good insights there, hopefully. And obviously, please feel free to come and have a chat to the guys and get a little bit more in-depth information as need be. So I really do appreciate that. So thank you very much. So
We'll move off.
So now, just in terms of closing off, Dan Owen will present closing slides.
Right, okay. I'm going to probably skip around in this presentation slightly. My job was to summarise what you've heard, give you a key takeaway and a bit of an offer from NTT, but I'd probably start in the middle, just a little bit, talking a bit about what App Dynamics does. So we'll come back to this one. We heard some great stories about App Dynamics, heard some great customer stories and how they're using it. I want to talk a little bit about business observability and maturity model of it. So when I started in IT, monitoring was syslogin, CPU usage, RAM, that sort of thing. And it still came down to everything is IT's fault. The network's not working. Go and fix it. Grey area diagnostics. What App Dynamics allows us to do is take that monitoring view up the maturity scale. So as you heard, we're talking about monitoring the business metrics. We're not talking about monitoring specific RAM cycles, CPU cycles, and hard disk failures, that sort of thing. So a lot of people are starting, level 0, looking at can I see what the technology is doing? But really, what you've heard today is all about organisations on varying degrees of maturity, where they're at, being able to capture key business KPIs and monitor things like, am I getting the pull through the website? Am I delivering to ACC, delivering to MOE? They're not being asked questions around the hardware and the networks, those sort of pieces. That, of course, is all there, but it trees up into what we call the full business observability stack. So I guess the key takeaway from that, what we want you to go away from here thinking about, is that when you do engage in application monitoring, and if you when you start talking about Thousand Eyes as well, as you said, think about what matters to a business in a context. Yes, we all work in the IT, probably work in the IT department, that's where we sit, but this is what's going to get the IT room talking to the business group at one time. Again, being involved in that PI planning, the planning work. If there's a new project coming on board, you might be the first people that get invested in that, because you're going to be planning out what it is that's important. Teams share priorities as well. So, the IT team should have the same goals as the finance team, should have the same goals as the customer support team in this. And that goal, again, is what are you tracking to and how are you making things go faster? And acting with confidence on what matters most to the business. I think all three of those things really reiterate what we've been saying there. So, because we've invited you out very early in the morning and you've listened to us talk, NTT, how many people actually aware of NTT as a makeup in New Zealand and Australia. So NTT is a big global organisation. We born our application dynamics practice originally out of the US, and that's made its way through the group, landed in Australia, and it's now becoming part of the New Zealand story that we're telling. Because of that, what we're trying to do is obviously get the information out to you guys. We want to help you as much as possible. So thank you for attending here. If any of you are interested in knowing more about App Dynamics, our team of consultants are happy to run a workshop with you, at no charge. Pick an application and we'll sit down and work through exactly what those key business metrics are, what the application's doing, where it sits, how can we help you start that journey. So everyone starts somewhere. These guys started somewhere. We can be the people that can actually come in and help on that leg. We'll work with you to align those goals with your businesses. We'll recommend some KPIs that you may not know that you could actually measure as well once you see the full story being told about exactly what the technology stack is doing. As you've heard, if everything's all singing, all humming, hopefully your operational costs go down. It allows you to make better decisions, better investments through that as well. And if we sit down and we run the advisory workshop, we'll help you get those goals and objectives together. We'll build up your strategy, and we'll recommend where to go to next as well. So that's something. It's all likelihood. I'll probably throw my hand up there and say, in all likelihood, it's probably be delivered remotely from our consultants overseas. But we'll just keep an eye on the situation, local situation, and see what we can do there. And then just reiterating, I guess, what you've heard from the two guys up here as well. It isn't ad hoc. We do work on priorities. We do work on business processes. There's a methodology to the madness. It's all about building up your plan, being able to execute it with speed and accuracy, and also how you report things back to the business as well. So if you can go and talk to the business on their level about what matters to them, you'll be taken more credibly, and you'll be invited back in again. And that's kind of all I had for you. Probably introduce myself, probably Dan Owen, so I'm our head of what we call digital transformation. This does fit squarely in my camp, so we can get things done. Are there any questions about what you've heard, what we're talking about? Maybe more around what App Dynamics does or is, or are you happy?
Is it a 6-month journey, Dan? Is it a week journey?
I guess it depends on how far you want to take it. Originally, I think this is slated to be around about anywhere up to kind of 3 months when you're working with customers to plan things out. The thing about App Dynamics is that once you've installed it, it doesn't actually stop. It's not set and forget, fire and forget. You install the software, you work with the business, you work with the technical teams, you set it up, you look at it, and you come back constantly and you're looking at what it's reporting on, what you're measuring. You get the feedback from the business about are they getting the information they need from it. And a lot of times you actually find out that you can report on things you didn't actually know you were important. It's like anything, the more data that you get and the way that you turn that data around to face people, they'll be asking for more things. So initially to get something up and running, short term, we can do that in a day or two to get something up and running. To get something that's actually valuable to the business, we need longer to that. But you'll soon find that we keep coming back to it, we keep tuning it, and keep looking for new things to do. So I wouldn't say it's actually a time-bound journey. I think it's something that can just keep going for as long as you think it's valuable for the business and keep finding new things. I mean, myself can get involved. We do have a local team that understand this as well. Plus, we've got the success from overseas in Australia. Can build business cases. We've got examples of those as well. Absolutely can help.
And
various sizes, yep. Ranging from a couple of 100 seats, I suppose, through to some large organisations, 10,000 seats and over. Been looking at, Cisco would have been worked on some major customers across the globe as well, and we joined the hip with you guys with Cisco. So Cisco coming in alongside us and talking about this and helping people out is that the joint power of NTT and Cisco with this is only beneficial, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Well, hey, look, that concludes the presentation. Once again, thanks to the clients who have turned up. Thanks to Blair and Dayton. I really appreciate your insights. And look, have a great day. Feel free to hang around and have a chat with the guys. but also if you want to reach out, Dan here in Wellington, or your local Cisco representative can certainly help you out in terms of next steps. Thank you very much.
Thank you.